Welcome. Today we're discussing the proposed Deep Geological Repository for Used Nuclear Fuel in Canada project, also known as the DGR project.
We'll provide you with an overview of the project as described by the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, or the NWMO, the project proponent.
This audio summarizes the initial project description submitted to the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada by the NWMO and outlines the main elements of the proposed project.
All right, so what exactly is a Deep Geological Repository?
Great question. It's a facility proposed to permanently store Canada's used nuclear fuel deep underground, over 500 meters below the surface, within solid rock. The idea is to keep radioactive material isolated from people and the environment for millions of years. On the surface, the proposed project would include a fuel packaging plant, storage areas for other low and mid-level waste, water management systems, security fencing, power lines, roads, and a rail link. There will be areas for managing rock and soil and housing for workers. Underground components would include service areas, tunnels for placing the used fuel, and 3 shafts for access and ventilation, as described by the proponent.
Canada has generated used nuclear fuel from decades of nuclear power production, and this material remains radioactive for millions of years. Right now, the used fuel is safely stored temporarily at reactor sites. The proposed DGR is intended to provide a long-term way to manage this material, if the project is approved. Okay, let's talk site selection. After 14 years of study and engagement, the NWMO chose a site in northwestern Ontario, in the territory of Wabigoon Lake Ojibway Nation, and near the Township of Ignace.
The Wabigoon Lake Ojibway Nation held a community vote in 2024, in which an 87% majority supported moving forward in the assessment process to determine whether the proposed project could be completed safely while respecting Anishinaabe values. The Township of Ignace indicated that they were a willing host community because the project would be in line with their community's goals, including community well-being. The township's hosting agreement sets commitments in 6 areas: people, economy, infrastructure, culture, environment, and governance, to ensure long-term benefits.
The proposed project would span over many decades, about 160 years from start to finish. Site preparation could begin around 2030, with shipments beginning in the 2040s once the DGR is operational. Operations would run for about 50 years. After operations, the project would enter a long-term monitoring phase before eventual closure. Decisions would be required from regulators at several stages in the project.
This project is subject to Canada's integrated assessment approach for nuclear projects. When a major nuclear project is proposed in Canada, it is subject to an integrated assessment led by the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, referred to as the IAAC, alongside the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, the CNSC.
An integrated assessment strengthens project design by considering environmental, economic, social, and health impacts, as well as impacts on Indigenous peoples and their rights. Where there are potential negative impacts, measures to reduce or eliminate them are explored and put in place.
Integrated assessments are comprehensive reviews that meet the requirements of the Impact Assessment Act and the Nuclear Safety and Control Act. This one project, one review approach makes it more efficient for everyone involved.
The project would be subject to both a federal impact assessment and nuclear regulatory oversight. IAAC leads the federal impact assessment process for nuclear projects of this scale, which assesses the effects for the entire life cycle of the project.
At the same time, the project would be regulated by the CNSC. The CNSC is responsible for nuclear safety and radiation protection. It would review license applications for each stage of the project, including site preparation, construction, operation, and closure. These reviews include technical assessments and public hearings.
The NWMO's proposed design uses multiple safety barriers, such as engineered containers, bentonite clay, and natural rock. A design that is intended to keep the used fuel isolated and contained from people and the environment. Oversight also extends to Wabigoon Lake Ojibway Nation, as agreed to with NWMO. Wabigoon Lake Ojibway Nation would also run their own sovereign review process, which is nation-led and grounded in Anishinaabe law, ensuring co-development, ceremonial protocols, data sovereignty, and monitoring reflect their jurisdiction and responsibilities to land and water.
As part of the impact assessment, the project is reviewed for its potential effects on the environment, people, and communities. In its initial project description, the proponent describes how the project could interact with those components. Some areas will require further studies and modeling before conclusions can be made. For instance, potential effects to the environment noted include changes to fish, birds, and wildlife due to in-water activities, such as building and operating water intake systems, changing site drainage, and releasing treated water. To reduce these effects, the proponent has proposed measures such as fish-friendly water intakes, timing restrictions to avoid sensitive periods like spawning or nesting, and buffer zones around important habitat.
Potential effects to people and communities noted include changes to health due to changes to air or water quality. Social considerations include traffic, temporary workers, pressure on local services, and concerns related to safety. Economic considerations include employment and procurement related to the project. The assessment also considers potential changes in background radioactivity in the environment, as well as possible effects on workers and nearby communities. The project design includes several layers intended to protect and isolate the radioactive material from the outside environment. Long-term monitoring, proposed to last about 100 years, is intended to help detect unexpected changes over time. Possible accidents or malfunctions will also be considered in the impact assessment. These could include equipment failures and human error. The assessment also looks at how environmental events such as flooding, earthquakes, or forest fires, and environmental conditions over the long term, including climate change and geological changes, could affect the project's ability to safely contain radioactive material.
So how can you participate? Provide your comments on the summary of the initial project description. Let us know your thoughts or what is of importance to you and your community. Comments should be based on local, regional, or indigenous knowledge of the site or surrounding environment, or provide relevant information to support the conduct of this assessment.
To submit a comment, use the button on the Deep Geological Repository, DGR, for Canada's Used Nuclear Fuel Project homepage on the Canadian Impact Assessment Registry.
Comments received will support IAC and the CNSC in the preparation of a summary of issues that will be sent to the proponent and help shape how the overall integrated assessment will be carried out.
The comment period on the summary of the initial project description closes on February 4th, 2026. There will be other opportunities to participate. Register for notifications from the Canadian Impact Assessment Registry to stay up to date and receive notifications about this project assessment and future opportunities to participate.
Thanks for taking the time to listen. We hope this episode helped clarify what the project involves and how the assessment process works.
To learn more or participate, visit the Canadian Impact Assessment Registry and register for updates. We appreciate your interest and engagement. Thanks for listening.